So Godzilla Singular Point has finally given Godzilla fans that wholesome animated series they've been dying for so long. Or maybe not, I hear some people are mixed on the show. But that's not the show we're looking at today. No, today we are looking at the first animated Godzilla series ever to be produced. And we're going to go over every single episode of the original Hanna Barbera cartoon from 1978. With that said, let's dive in. Please consider both liking and subscribing, it really helps. The TV show was created at Hanna Barbera Studios in the late 70s, and was made to eat off the success of the remaining Godzilla films being brought to America at the time, such as Megaman, which was promoted heavily in the States. Joe Barbera, one of the founders of the company, contacted a friend of his, Henry G. Saperstein, to help obtain the rights to the Godzilla character. If the name Saperstein sounds familiar to you, then congratulations. You have been paying attention to the English credits to certain movies, as he was a producer and partner on some of the early Toho kaiju pictures. Saperstein was able to get Toho's approval to greenlight the project, and thus became a co-producer on the show. The series was to premiere on NBC with other Saturday morning cartoons. The tone of the show was meant to be played serious and was supposed to somewhat follow the movies, with Godzilla's adventures likely taking place in Japan. However, the higher-ups at NBC stations felt that audiences wouldn't really find those adventures all that entertaining. What's more, they laid down several restrictions on things Godzilla could not do in the cartoon, such as cause major damage or hurt human characters, to name a few. With all that thrown in their face, the team at Hanna Barbera went back to the drawing board and reworked the show to appeal to a more general audience. The characters they came up with are Carl Majors, the captain of the cruiser called the Calico, which is pretty much the mystery machine in the show, Dr. Quinn Darien, the scientist and brains of the group, Brock Borden, first mate and pretty much the muscle of the team, Pete, Dr. Quinn's nephew, and Godzuki! Yes, Godzuki, the most infamous character from the show. I don't even know what Godzuki even is to Godzilla. I hear some people say it's his nephew, but it never goes explained in the show. Even if I'm to accept that, it's just weird to think Godzilla has a sibling that just dumped their kid off on him. Speaking of the big guy, let's go over him real fast. Godzilla's design was done by producer Doug Wildey and longtime artist George Wheeler, making the Monster King a big green dinosaur who has a fire breath instead of an atomic one. Yes, the design was simplified, but I say it keeps just enough of the movie incarnation's traits to pass this design as being Godzilla without it looking too different. One power I don't really have any idea why they added, but did anyway, was give Godzilla laser beams that shoot out his eyes. If I had to guess, it was probably to give Godzilla another fighting power other than his breath. It's odd, but the modern Godzillas are always getting some new type of powers, so maybe it was just ahead of its time. One last thing I want to go over is his roar. Yes, if you've never seen this show before, that is the actual roar. It was done by a guy named Ted Cassidy, whom I don't mean to sound so judgmental towards, but would it have killed him to do a little more than just say roar in a graspy voice? In fact, it's like that for a lot of the monsters in this show. Why they couldn't use the normal roar, I really couldn't tell you. It was the late 70s, so maybe they couldn't produce it. Anyway, enough of the history. Let's get into our first episode titled The Firebird. The story starts us in Alaska, where a dormant volcano unexpectedly erupts with two geologists trapped on an island with said volcano. Elsewhere, the crew of the Calico are about to be hit by a ginormous tidal wave. With no other options, they use a mysterious device to call Godzilla to save them, which he does. If you're wondering about this contraption, it's simply referred to as the Godzilla signal, a device that sends a frequency out to Godzilla to call him out to its location. And this device is going to get broken, smashed, and lost a lot throughout the series. Anyway, after the save, the crew receive a distress call from the geologist and rescue them in their hovercraft, and wow, can this thing get in the air. After saving them, they go back to the volcano to find out what was causing the eruption, leaving Pete, Godzuki, and one of the men back at the ship. Godzuki, for whatever reason, feels like he has to sneak off board and chase them. After Godzuki flies away, Pete chases after him by flying in a minicopter. How old is this boy exactly? I mean, we never see him in school, so either he's a dropout or he just looks really young for his age. Also, what the hell was this guy doing? Did he just not care if this boy under his supervision flew off in a minicopter to a potential death zone? Anyway, the crew stumble across a giant Firebird that had been living in the magma till it decided today it didn't want to. Also, why isn't anyone wearing any protective gear now?
There's no way we're gonna cross over that.
You're inside a volcano. You shouldn't even be alive with how hot it is down there. They're not even wearing masks to help them with all the smoke down there. But hey, at least Brock bring the rope. Godzuki and Pete meet up with them, which accomplished nothing, and they all make their way back to the ship, with the Firebird making her escape.
Godzilla's our only chance.
Godzilla emerges for a second time to battle the red-hot terror of the sky. Godzilla's got the upper hand in power. With just one tail swipe, he manages to knock the Firebird out and making it give my favorite expression throughout the whole episode. Godzilla falls in the ocean like a klutz, and the Firebird makes her escape to the Arctic. Reason being, to migrate. Godzilla catches up and the two continue their fight. Godzuki once again feels he has to do something to help, but ultimately just ends up goofing around and getting hurt. Godzilla goes for the rescue, and I present to you and all the world the most magnificent scene in the entire series. And it is of Godzilla smiling. It's beautiful. No, literally. It's stunning. Okay, so the monsters take their battle to the ocean. The Firebird can just breathe underwater somehow. For whatever reason, it goes inside a cave and Godzilla gets the idea to trap it inside, which he does, saving the world, which could have been overrun by a bunch of Firebirds. Not bad for a premiere episode, even with its hiccups. B+. Episode 2, The Earth Eater. This one has us in San Francisco, where the crew are on their way to a science convention for Dr. Quinn to give a speech. While arriving, the Golden Gate Bridge starts collapsing with all the weight of so many cars stuck on it. Hey, yeah, I don't think that's how that works, but whatever, Godzilla rescue time.
It's Godzilla! He'll save us!
After that line, I'm guessing that people around the world just know who Godzilla is and just accept him as a giant green monster that lingers in the sea. After Godzilla puts the cars on some grassy terrain, the crew go to investigate why the urgent evacuation of the city. After docking, they find out the entire city of San Francisco is empty. After further investigating, they stumble across some underground tunnels, and eventually the Earth Eater, who can use a type of sonic ray from its antenna to cause destruction. The gang become trapped, but quickly realize that the creature can't stand bright lights due to it living underground for so long. But it quickly comes over that seconds later. Time to call Godzilla. They fight for a bit, and the Earth Eater escapes. Quinn then comes up with the idea to put the creature to sleep by throwing gas containers in the sinkholes. I don't know why they're just not sending Godzilla after it, but okay. Suffice it to say, the plan backfires. The gang escape by way of cable car and drive into Godzilla, who looks like he can now step on the city itself. The monsters get their rematch with everyone holding each other really tightly, and the Earth Eater escapes again. But instead of hiding underground, it decides to climb the Golden Gate Bridge. It amazes me how a few cars cause the section of the bridge to collapse, but a giant monster sitting on top of it is just fine. Anyways, thanks to the combined efforts of both Godzilla and Godzuki, the debris-eating menace falls into the water and becomes a pile of mud. At least I think it's mud. I mean, that thing was eating quite a lot today. This episode does have some pacing problems, with the creature always managing to get away somehow, making the final act seem very drawn out. I do like the city backdrop in this episode though, and I do wish more episodes would take place in towns rather than wastelands and water fields. I also realize there's a lot of elements here that would be used in the 1998 American Godzilla film, which I'm sure is just a huge coincidence. C. Episode 3, Attack of the Stoners. From city to sand, we're in Egypt now, where a man named Gordon Jarvis has finally come across an ancient pyramid he has been searching for his entire life. Unfortunately for him, he stumbles across two stone giants who come to life and scare him away by their freezing breath. You'd think with him being in the desert, he'd actually be enjoying that. Meanwhile, the crew are hanging out by the Nile River till the blue Jarvis bashes their fun. We're then told the story of the sand creatures as being stone guardians of Ramal. They go to investigate and for whatever reason think it's smart to bring both Pete and Godzuki along to this supposed dangerous place. They get caught in an unexpected blizzard which causes the blades to freeze. Only chance to save them is Godzilla. Godzuki encounters the Guardians and Godzilla comes to the rescue. Now at this point we're only 8 minutes in the episode, so there's no way it's ending here, and yep, they're hiding. Since no one saw them and Big G can't find them, he just goes away. The crew soon then come across the pyramids and dig for whatever reason. Why exactly are they here again? A sandslide causes both Pete and Godzuki to separate from the adults and both encounter the Guardians. However, this time they don't move and remain as statues. Ignoring them for now, the adults go back to digging while Pete and Godzuki get some water at a nearby lagoon. Pete gets caught in a whirlpool, Godzuki saves him, and they both end up inside the pyramid. I should mention now that this whole little section with them is boring and pretty stupid. The Guardians now decide to come to life and proceed to attack the crew. Feeling helpless, they call upon Godzilla. Pete and Godzuki manage to reunite with the others, and Godzuki just stupidly runs out into the action. Godzilla holds his own, but it's 2-on-1. The Guardians manage to get the upper hand on Godzilla by freezing him, something that was foreshadowed in the first fight. With Godzilla now frozen, the two giants charge right into him for the final blow. But Godzilla manages to unfreeze himself in the nick of time and dodges the oncoming attack. Not gonna lie, this was a pretty bland episode with many dumb moments. But I did like the Guardians though, being living stone giants in the desert with freezing abilities. It kinda sounds unnatural, but I do like the unexpected design element there. C-. Episode 4, the Megavolt Monster. So in this episode, ships are being attacked out at sea by some electrical energy. The crew get wind of this and of course go to investigate for no reason. Since when does every unnatural occurrence become their problem? It doesn't take long though before they find the cause of the disasters. Both Quinn and Brock get sunk at the bottom of the ocean while the creatures attack the ship. It's Godzilla time. Godzilla fends off the creatures, but it's too late to save Quinn and Brock. And what follows is a very real talk with both Captain Majors and Pete.
Pete, listen to me. The bathysphere's fallen into the valley trench. There's a chance that we might not be able to reach them.
That's pretty dark to say, especially for a kid's cartoon. However, Quinn and Brock are okay and they're just under the sea, where they discover a valley with a giant pocket of air holding the water above them. Hey, I'm no science expert, I'll just go with it. They go to explore but are quickly trapped by the Megavolt monsters. I wish the show would actually give its creatures names. Lucky for them, Godzuki suddenly appears and scares them off. Above the surface, Carl and Pete go inside Godzilla's hand so he can take them down to the bottom of the sea to find the others. Why they need to go down there instead of just Godzilla doing it himself is beyond my understanding, especially when you're putting a kid's life literally within the hands of a giant monster. Anyway, the trio downstairs find that the Megavolt monsters are getting their power from some rocks at the bottom of the sea. Godzilla comes, they fight, Godzuki disrupts the air pocket and ruins the creature's power source. Now all that's left to do is get the crew back to the surface. One of the monsters still has enough energy left and continues to fight Godzilla, at least till it runs out of power, shrinks, and swims off. And that's about it.
Oh, wow!
Kidding aside, this is the first episode I actually found to be really good. The tone of the episode is taken more serious than normal, the tension is high in a lot of moments, and the pacing is pretty decent. Only small complaint is that they don't really come up with a way to get rid of the monsters. I get the show can't actually have Godzilla murder the creatures like that, but they don't even try here. They just get away and that's that. It's whatever though. A-. Episode 5, the Seaweed Monster.
Oh my, what's this gonna be?
At this point, you might have picked up the very creative monster names the show has delivered so far. Look, I get they couldn't use any other Toho kaiju without buying the rights to them, but if you're gonna go with original creatures, some more effort would be appreciated than just the Seaweed Monster. Imagine if older characters were named the Spiky Monster or the Smog Monster. Oh wait. Anyway, the episode opens up with both Quinn and Brock scuba diving to gather plants for research, when literally out of nowhere the Seaweed Monster appears. It tentacles Quinn, of course, and Godzuki comes for the save. The creature surfaces and it's kaiju battle time. Godzilla flees it off and Quinn takes a piece of seaweed that dropped off the monster to analyze it. We're then shown Godzuki doing stupid things, and we also get to see where he sleeps, on top of a bed of hay, which is never shown again. The piece of seaweed comes to life and transforms into another monster. It then swims off to an inhabited island. The crew call Godzilla to stop it, but soon realize that the creature has powers to regenerate. Quinn then sees a piece of seaweed that's scribbled up on deck, and gets the idea to beat the creature by drying it out, which Godzilla does, and the day is saved. This episode is definitely another weak one. The monster design is pretty bad as well. I get this thing has the distinction of being one of the first plant-based kaiju, but design-wise it just does not look appealing at all. There's also a lot of weird animation errors and moments. I get a lot of the episodes are filled with them, but this one seems to have the most, at least as far as I could see.
Get that monster onto dry land.
Pretty close there, Captain.
C. Episode 6, The Energy Beast. Hey, this episode marks our first space creature. Or maybe it isn't, a lot of these creatures don't really give clear origins. So this thing called the Energy Beast arrives at a dam the crew just happened to be at, and starts absorbing all the electricity, getting stronger. Godzilla gets called and is big as the dam, but then suddenly shrinks enough to stand on the thing. Hey, it's kinda like what happened to him standing on the aircraft carrier in Godzilla vs. Kong. The two titans have their short battle, with the space centipede striking Godzilla with an energy ball, stunning him and causing him to act very weird. Godzuki snaps him out of it, the Energy Beast gets away, and Godzilla just doesn't care. The crew then go to investigate the crash site of the meteor that occurred the night before, believing it has connection to the Energy Beast. Moments later, a nearby power plant is being attacked by Godzilla. The crew get confused and go find out what's wrong with him by flying close in their minicopter. Oh, and of course, you gotta bring the kid along to this dangerous situation. Godzilla doesn't seem to care about them and just continues to absorb the electricity. The crew then get the idea to just shut down the reactor, which does work, but doesn't stop Godzilla from looking for his next food source. Before the crew plan their next move, they tell Pete and Godzuki that it's dangerous and that they should wait back at the ship. Finally, some reasonable adult responsibilities. Of course, however, they disobey them, and Pete comes up with the idea to get Godzuki to try and snap Godzilla out of it. He does so by doing his casual Godzilla call, and just like that, a second Godzilla appears. However, the characters in the show don't seem to know which one is the friendly Godzilla, the one with or without the glowing aura. The two fight it out for a bit until the glowing Godzilla transforms back into the Energy Beast. Now out of power, it retreats back to its spaceship. Godzilla finds it and tosses it back to space, I guess, or somewhere across the world. He didn't exactly kill it, he more or less made it someone else's problem. This episode wasn't bad. I liked a few of the homages to past movies seeded throughout the episode, whether they were intentional or not. And even though it was a fake Godzilla, it was still neat to see this incarnation of the creature causing havoc. At least as cool as it can be at times. B. Episode 7, The Colossus of Atlantis. This is definitely one of the better episodes of the show, but there's also a lot of dumb things that make no sense. So this one starts us with the crew finding the lost city of Atlantis. They get pulled in by a weird ray and call Godzilla to save them, which he gets zapped by a different ray and disappears, leaving the crew to fend for themselves and lose the Calico. This is not a bad start for an episode. The tension is pretty high now that the characters have to find their way to escape without relying on Godzilla or anything they had on the ship. They have to be careful though, because like what Brock says,
and somebody out there doesn't like us.
The crew then split up, with Brock and Quinn stumbling across the archives of Atlantis with a set of DVDs. No joke, this show was way ahead of its time. Well, they're called history discs in the show, but you can't help but see the similarities. They view the last disc, which shows the final day the city was populated. Turns out there was an earthquake, and to avoid this problem, they put themselves in suspended animation. Okay, I don't understand how that's saving them. Back outside, a giant robot known as the Colossus is activated, and is patrolling around to kill the crew. The Colossus is one of those more frightening things of the show. It's like the Terminator from the first film. It shows up with no emotion and won't rest until you're dead. It encounters Carl, Pete, and Zuki, chases them down, and just so happens to shatter the structure which was housing Godzilla, who is now in suspended animation. It never goes explain on how Godzilla got there, but whatever. Quinn and Brock come across a time machine and use it without any idea on how the thing works, and they arrive right when Atlantis is about to have its quake. So instead of using the time machine to get back to their time, they just take the long nap and rest with them. Back with Group A, they come across Quinn and Brock, who are now trapped with the rest of the people. How this happened exactly, I couldn't tell you. Because they found these people before and Brock and Quinn weren't there, but once they got back, after they used the time machine, they're just there now. That's not exactly how time travel works, but okay. Anyway, they hear a voice out of nowhere, and it turns out to be Kal-El, or Kal-El? I don't know how to say this. He's the chief scientist of Atlantis. And how is he talking to them now?
I am a mental projection from my sleeping body, which stands behind me.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
He explains that the Colossus is their guardian and looks over them, but suffered a malfunction of some sort during the quake, making it want to keep the people of Atlantis in the frozen state, because as Kal-El puts it,
our Colossus has become an evil creature.
What a twist!
So now to free the people, they have to destroy the robot. How did they do that? Of course by awakening Godzilla, which they do. Now because the Colossus is a machine, Godzilla can actually be a little more violent than what the show usually lets him be. Godzilla beats the robot and the people are free, but the crew still are without a ship. To solve this problem, Kal-El uses the time chamber to send them back to when the ship was still intact. If that's the case, then what happened to their past selves, who should be on the ship that's still in one piece? Do they just disappear when they get there? Do they kill them off? Do they inherit their bodies? How does that work exactly? Anyway, the Atlanteans take off... What? Wait, if the entire city can just fly, then when the earthquake happened, couldn't they have just... Oh, whatever, it's a kid's show, I'm not making sense of this. A-. Episode 8, The Horror of Forgotten Island. For once a title that isn't just the feature creature's name. So to start, the crew are caught up in a deadly storm and come across a weird force field that mirrors them. It mysteriously disappears and reveals an island beyond it. The crew then dock and stay overnight to repair the ship and let the storm go by. The next morning they find a giant footprint and quickly find out what made said print. A giant Cyclops crab hybrid which is laughable in design. Seriously, this thing is really ugly looking. They call Godzilla, but the barrier comes back and he spends a majority of the episode just hitting the thing over and over. The group hide out in a cave and they discover hieroglyphs. Okay, get this story. Aliens from another world crashed on this one specific island for whatever reason, encountered the Cyclops, which gave them a hard time, causing them to build a machine that puts up a barrier around the island so that no one would go on it, and the Cyclops could never leave it. What kind of half-assed backstory is that? For one, why were aliens so interested on this one specific island? The crew never come across anything unique on this place. And second, the machine that puts up the barrier is right out in the open. It's not even like it's in a cave or anything, they just left it on shore. How has the Cyclops never come across this yet? Also, does it have a timer on when it just goes off and on at random? Anyway, Quinn finds out how to turn off the barrier, Godzilla gets in, and the two giants have the worst fight in the series so far. With a lot of awkward close-ups of them roaring, and nothing really going on. The Cyclops retreats, Quinn builds a timer that will reactivate the force field once they leave, so they gotta haul ass out of there. The Cyclops comes back, but battles by staying invisible. Brock then comes up with a plan by throwing paint on the creature, something that was never foreshadowed. Godzilla tosses the beast and runs as fast as he can to escape. The timer goes off and the Cyclops gets trapped inside for the rest of its life. This is a pitifully bad episode, with nothing making much sense, and a kaiju battle fans of the art would even admit is the dullest thing they could be watching. F. Episode 9, Island of Lost Ships. You'll have to forgive the quality on these next episodes as they're TV rips. Season 1 has only been released on DVD, with Volume 3 going for outrageous prices. And I hope to God you guys are not paying this much for 5 episodes. Anyway, this episode starts with the crew caught in a storm. A weird sound hypnotizes Captain Majors and causes the ship to get stuck. Godzilla gets called on to get it and puts it on a nearby island for the crew to repair the ship. The gang split up to investigate the island, with Quinn, Pete, and Godzuki encountering a woman named Morphia, who agrees to let them stay on the island under the circumstances that they don't open that special door. Carl and Brock go to investigate a maze and encounter a Minotaur. Lucky for them, Pete and Godzuki just happen to notice them down there and save the two. Morphia then reveals her evil plan to keep the crew on the island until sunset, because after the sun goes down, the island will disappear for 1,000 years. Out of spite, Godzuki opens that special door and reveals a creature known as the Chimera, who the Siren Sisters can't control. Godzilla gets called upon to battle the creature and beats it by shoving it back in the door. Okay. The sisters then unleash a bunch of powers that turn a majority of the crew into stone and puts Godzilla to sleep. Pete and Godzuki, of course, are the only ones left and come up with a plan to wake up Godzilla by screaming in his face, which, no surprise, works. The Siren Sisters combine into one and now control the Chimera, even though they said earlier they couldn't. Morphia then, I guess, combines with the Chimera, making it grow bigger. Godzilla outsmarts it by having it fall into the ocean and dissolving it. How that works exactly, I don't know. And everyone manages to get off the island safe. A decent episode with a lot of new monsters, and a plot that's easy to understand with some mystery elements planted in to keep the show interesting. The kaiju action, unfortunately, is very forgettable though. C. Episode 10, The Magnetic Terror. The crew find a pilot named Eddie out at sea who explains that his plane suddenly went out of control. They agree to drop him off in an oil rig in Antarctica, where they unfortunately come across a giant sea turtle looking creature eating the outpost. It's Godzilla time. The magnetic monster proves to be a bit much than the monsters Godzilla has faced before, with it able to deflect Godzilla's energy attacks. causing a bit of fire to hit the oil out in the ocean, which perfectly surrounds the Calico. Godzilla saves them by making a whirlpool for no reason, and manages to let the turtle escape. The crew go after the creature instead of sending Godzilla to kill it. What they were going to do when they caught up to it, I couldn't tell you. Carl and Brock try to track it underwater and manage to get themselves stuck. Quinn, Pete, and Godzuki go to try and track the creature above land with the hovercraft, leaving Eddie in charge of the ship, who I can only assume dies, because he's never heard from the rest of the episode after he hears something outside.
What was that?
The men get swallowed by the creature, it encounters Group B, and now it's round 2 with Godzilla, who definitely makes the funniest entrance in the series yet. Also, yes, this is the first and I believe only time in the series in which Godzilla shoots fire from his nostrils. Thankfully, he never does it again, because it just looks stupid. Carl and Brock tell the others that they're willing to sacrifice themselves in order for Godzilla to beat the monster, which is one of those rare moments in the show where the main cast are willing to accept death, definitely giving it a more darker approach. The turtle absorbs more magnetic energy and becomes supposedly the biggest creature in the entire Godzilla franchise. I'll leave that debate up to you on that. I mean, can you think of another monster that can actually swallow Godzilla? Quinn comes up with an idea for the turtle to get overfed on energy for it to explode, which ends up happening. And somehow that also spared the lives of Carl and Brock. This is another one of those more mature episodes, and it's not a bad one at that. Also, some could feel that the creature has a small parallel to Gamera here, especially in certain scenes, but I'm sure it's purely coincidental. B. Episode 11, The Breeder Beast. This one almost feels as though Toho themselves stepped in to make this episode, and I'm being very generous when I say that. It's one of those monster on the loose type episodes where a microorganism transforms into a giant due to being exposed by radiation. The outcome of it looks like a cross between a Mothra larva, Hedra, and the Blob. It goes on a rampage in Washington, D.C., and Godzilla, well, can't actually fight it. You see, fire is the thing's weakness, but due to the huge amount of radiation it's consumed, any fire used on it would cause a nuclear explosion. Talk about high stakes. Finally, the military gets involved in one of these situations, but unfortunately can't do anything. The monster, however, does get stopped once the crew realize it could control its internal reactions. So Godzilla finally fights back, and the day is saved. I love this episode. The plot is a simple stop the monster episode. Godzilla's in it a lot, but has to hold back fighting the thing, causing the characters to get creative and try to find ways to stop the breeder beast without brawling it. And as I said earlier, it's always nice to see battles take place in a city instead of an empty wasteland. And I even have to admit Godzuki also gets some moments to shine here, without them being stupid. Though there are those moments here too, but still, this is an overall exciting episode. A. Episode 12, The Subzero Terror. Taking place in the Himalayan mountains, a group of scientists are in search of geothermal energy. However, the plans are quickly out the window once strange avalanches start occurring. Enter the Calico. Our heroes are then told of a strange creature called the Huachuca, who the locals are saying is the reason as to why these avalanches keep occurring. But who believes in that stuff in this world, right? Also, is no one going to question this shady fellow back here? The gang split up, with Group A looking for geothermal energy, and Group B staying back on the ship. Group B come across a giant drain. Following inside the tunnel, the group come across a group of snow people at work. Group A, not long after, takes shelter inside a cave after an unexpected avalanche occurs. Their guide Tenzing gets lost, but the group find him soon after. Only something's now strange about him. But of course they don't question his now odd behavior. They soon come across a tropical climate past the mountains and, surprise surprise, the man they found wasn't their guide.
What a twist!
The Huachuca take them prisoner and explain their master plan to take back the mountains from humanity, by going to war with them with an army of giant Huachuca. The gang get frozen, Brock saves them, an overgrown Huachuca gets released to stop them and captures Quinn.
Put me down!
And Godzilla gets called for the rescue. The kaiju have their dance battle until a dormant volcano becomes active. The gang escape and Godzilla plunges the hole with the Huachuca inside, causing the race of Yetis to burn and die a slow, painful death. It's a bit on the slow side, but there's still a lot of fun to be had once you get to the Huachuca race. C+. Episode 13, The Time Dragons. Well, this episode wastes no time getting Godzilla out of the water. So a nuclear satellite is falling from orbit and it's gonna land exactly where the Calico is. Go figure. Good thing they had that radio on. Their only hope of survival is Godzilla. He stops the satellite by catching it, then they somehow get teleported back millions of years ago. Not knowing where they are, the crew go exploring, encounter a Diplodocus, who's almost as big as Godzilla. Big G scares it away, Pete stupidly gets lost and almost eaten. The crew then encounter cavemen who can speak normally and even know what dragons are.
A dragon!
Since Godzuki behaves around the crew, the cavemen believe they're dragon tamers, and invite them to their village as guests. After arriving at their sad village, Carl goes Dr. Stone on the place and helps modify their home, to protect them from dragons. Yeah, as it turns out, the cavemen refer to all the dinosaurs as dragons. Not sure why, but whatever. I guess time dinosaurs just didn't have a good ring to it. After that, the crew go back to their ship and encounter an Allosaurus. Godzilla gets called to battle it, but stumbles across this strange goo, which he hurls around for no reason and gets teleported back to the present day, with the dragon and crew falling soon after. They arrive right in the time before the satellite hits, and again, this is not how time travel works. By now there should be like 3 crews at this point. Anyway, Godzilla blows the satellite into the hands of the Allosaurus, and it gets teleported back to the past, I guess. One last thing to note here is that the remaining bit of this episode has really smooth animation. I got nothing else to say about it, it just looks really nice. B. And that'll do it for Season 1. Look forward to Part 2 in the future, and as always, thank you all for watching to the end, and take care.
He never signed a piece of legislation, nor did he lead troops into battle. But boy, could he get his way! Godzilla! TNT honors one of our own special heroes during an all-day President's Day celebration of Godzilla movies and tunes during TNT's Godzilla Rama.